Upgrading SharePoint, what you need to know. This is targeted at our SP Marketplace customers who are upgrading from our older versions of our products on SharePoint Classic to our version 15, which is on SharePoint Modern. And what we really want to do is give you an overview of things you should consider before you migrate and some of the differences between Classic and Modern. So first of all, just a little background. Why did Microsoft change SharePoint? And some of you may know this, but a lot of people don't. When Office 365 first came out, and really for the 5 years of its first initial versions of Office 365, it really was just a bunch of disparate services and tools that were great, but were also hard to use because they were separate services and tools. Office 365 now, where Microsoft is taking it, is really moving towards an integrated digital workplace where everything works together, and where SharePoint, for instance, is one component of that overall digital workplace. So in the old version, SharePoint was a standalone kind of service and app in the environment, and now it's an overall part of a digital workplace, which is all brought together with Office 365 and what they're calling Microsoft 365. So if we take a look at this, what is happening in this? What is Microsoft doing? Well, they're creating a common architecture across all the different services and software that make up Office 365. First of all, they're moving towards a consistent user experience. And we're going to find that that consistent user experience goes across all the modules in the headers, how you navigate, and so on. But also they're moving towards Teams to be kind of the center of the user experience of the Office 365 or Microsoft 365 digital workplace. They're consolidating down to a common security model. Instead of having Exchange security and SharePoint security and everything, Azure AD is becoming the common security model that they're going to be using. They're also creating tools and capabilities that go across all aspects of Office 365. So for business processes, there is now Power Automate, which goes across SharePoint, Teams, Outlook. It can touch and work with all of those as well as third-party applications. For business intelligence or dashboards, they have Power BI, and that's the common tool to use for that, and that goes across all the services. And from an app model, they have a shared app model, that when you create an app or an application out there, that it can work across the entire Microsoft 365 workplace. And really where it's going is the common UI and what your employees and end users are going to be working through is going to be Teams. That really Teams is the user interface that they will be working through. And through Teams, you'll be able to get the organization type of capabilities. This is your intranet, for instance. News events, resources, docs files, processes, services, things that the organization presents to the employee out there. Also, communication. We already know, probably many of your people are already using MS Teams for chat. So communication's done through MS Teams. The personal side of it, your email, your calendar, your files, that's traditionally been Outlook. But we'll find also that now you can go through Teams and get to a lot of the personal services type thing that an employee uses. And then finally, there's the collaboration side. What used to be maybe team sites in SharePoint is now Teams, where groups of people can collaborate in departments or for projects or ad hoc teams as well. So this is where it's all going. And if you can see, SharePoint is kind of spread through here, but is one component of the overall 365 digital workplace. So if we take a look at it, what you can do now in Teams, for instance, our homepage, the intranet, is actually part of Teams, and you can actually have an icon up here that takes you to the homepage from within Teams. And you can do your Doc Central, Process Central, those type of things, all right within Teams and not have to get out of Teams and go into SharePoint. You also see that some of these personal things, here's um, tasks and task management and that type of thing, done through Teams. And again, that's instead of doing it just through Outlook, you can actually do it through Teams. Even your file management, your personal file management in OneDrive, can be done through the Teams interface and remain in that. Any of your communications, your chat, your meetings, those are all done through Teams now and can be accessed. Even your department sites, if you have our IT products or HR products or whatever, which provide a full IT support kind of site with a help desk and everything else, you can now access that through Teams and even access the cases and so on through your IT team out there. And then finally, the employee service portals, such as my IT, my HR, and so on, also can be accessed through Teams. And you can even set up, if you see over here, here's an app that is anytime somebody's in Teams, they need to get and submit something for IT or that type of thing, they can just hit this icon and it will bring this up. So everything now can be accessed through that common user interface of Teams across not just SharePoint, but the whole Office 365 digital workplace. So that's why SharePoint had to change because it was no longer just a content management system off by itself, but it was something new and it had to be re-architected so that it would fit into this overall digital workplace. So let's take a look at what has changed. What will be different when you're moving from the old SharePoint to the new? Well, first and foremost, and what a lot of people don't realize is there's a core change to the architecture. In classic SharePoint, it was a hierarchical architecture. There was the site collection, a root site in that site collection, and subsites. And it would inherit permissions and look and feel. In the modern SharePoint, it's a flat kind of physical structure. And so all sites are their own site collection. Now, you can actually go in and make it kind of a hierarchy, but it's more of a logical hierarchy using what's called hub and spoke, and that will also allow you to pass on the look and feel. So you get some of the same things in modern that you had in classic, but if you have to reorganize things or if you have to change the hierarchy, you can do that without having to create new sites and migrate. It's all part of it. Now, the main reason for this hierarchy, too, was in relation to security and teams. In Classic, the security model actually sat at the site collection level, and you might inherit security to the lower levels. But in Modern, it's no longer necessarily the SharePoint permission model. It's actually using Azure Active Directory permissions. And each site has its own security model. So there's no more of, site collection and then these sites don't actually have their security model. It's up here. Each of the sites has their own security model, and it's related to Office 365 groups and MS Teams. So now IT, the site, the SharePoint site, is also a team because it's the site behind the teams, and it uses the member, visitor, owner type security model with Active Directory. You still can use SharePoint permissions for detailed security out there, but in general, it is using Azure Active Directory, and we'll see that eventually it could be that SharePoint permissions and security model actually goes away. Here's a big one. This is one that people a lot of times mess up on, honestly. And consultants, if consultants aren't up to date and they made all their money on doing branding, okay, that there was in the old one there was full flexibility to apply unique branding, to change master pages, to do CSS to your SharePoint. Well, Microsoft doesn't want to do that anymore because the branding and the look and feel really need to be the same across all the different services that are out there because they want to have one digital workplace kind of consistency across everything. So while you can still go in and change colors, change some of the headers and those type of things, you can no longer have the full flexibility of master pages and CSS and so on. And you really don't want to, because if somebody's going to pop into, into Power BI or go into Planner from one to the other, they don't want it to look like a completely different application because it's all part of this digital workplace look and feel. So you have some flexibility on branding. I will tell you that the pages on SharePoint pages, you have a lot more flexibility with sections and everything else, much nicer. But the days of saying I'm going to go change master pages and CSS are over. Okay, the branding is more what you get. What you see is what you get because of the consistency need across all the different services in Office 365. Okay. Changes to SharePoint intranet. In Classic, the intranet site was the home for SharePoint. Now, one of the problems, though, is how did you get people to them? If you didn't have it in the root site, they had to know the URL. And a lot of times it just wasn't convenient. Now, in modern SharePoint, they have the concept of a home site. And it actually makes the intranet site the home site for all of Office 365. So whether you're in Teams, there's an icon here to take you home. If you're in Planner, there's an icon here to take you to the intranet home. Or even in SharePoint, there's an icon up here to take you to the home site. So it really does now truly become the home site for the digital workplace, and Microsoft's made it much easier to get to. Okay, and that's something that when you upgrade to V15, you want to have us set it up as a home site when you're ready to roll it out. So some other changes to SharePoint. We'll go down the list here. Mobile support. It was clunky. In modern, you have full responsive, you have SharePoint mobile, you have Teams mobile. It is much better. List limitations go away. That beautiful thing. So no more 5,000 item limit. The list limitations, maybe 30 million. We've got people with 100,000 items, no problem for like cases or assets or something like that. No more just SharePoint workflows. In fact, Microsoft is stopping support for those. It's going to Power Automate flows, which again supports not just SharePoint, but all those services. So you can pass information between SharePoint and Planner or SharePoint and Outlook and so on, much easier. The charts or dashboards, they used to be web parts. Now it's Power BI and using Power BI for that. And again, this goes across all the services and can pull data from sources across everything from SharePoint to Planner to other things as well. Page editing and layout was kind of clunky, old. It's very nice, WYSIWYG. Layouts can be done, sections can be done, even background shading and so on. It overall looks much better. There's SharePoint-oriented web parts here. The web parts in many cases not only work in SharePoint, but they support all 365 services. So you could have a web part in SharePoint that shows the planner charts and planner buckets and so on. You could have it do the same thing across other services. So again, all integrated. And then finally, if you wanted to integrate it with MS Teams, you couldn't do it. But in modern, it's actually can become an MS Teams app out there, just like we saw with the My IT earlier here in that example. So you can actually set it up so that the homepage, the departments, everything can be accessed through Teams. So it's very much a change, a fairly substantial change in how SharePoint works. So you want to make sure that you educate yourself. So it's a whole new ballgame, folks. That's just the way that's really, and if you don't take it as that, and you think you're just going to pick up stuff you have on your on-premise or your old SharePoint and move it over, you're in for a rude awakening, honestly. So the key thing is to educate yourself on the overall Microsoft 365 architecture. Understand the parts and pieces that are in it. You don't need to be expert at it, but you just do need to know how things kind of fit together. Again, I can't say it enough. You go on videos all over the internet, and everybody's saying, don't assume all your SharePoint experience automatically applies to modern SharePoint. It's a whole new ballgame. you need to take the time to learn it, to learn how to edit pages, to learn some of the new formatting you can do with Microsoft lists, which are actually lists from SharePoint, and how it can work in Teams as well. Again, can't say enough. Don't try to just port over directly your old sites. You really should step back and rethink your whole actually intranet and digital workplace structure because it is going to be different and it is going to be integrated with Teams as well. And then finally, if you've just kind of opened up Teams to everybody out here and you've got Teams all over the place, you're in trouble already. You've just started chaos in the cloud. And one of the things you need to do is to really step back, do this workplace structure, take control of Teams, and implement some governance over Teams, and bring SharePoint into Teams. Don't have them be two separate things. Bring them together, and that's really what our version 15 does. So hopefully this has been helpful. And ask our consultants and for help if you need help. We also do services where we will actually do a digital workplace design, which helps you plan this structure that brings Teams and SharePoint together into it. Thank you for taking the time, and hopefully this was helpful.